Howdy, everyone. Happy May. It's May 2nd already. You're watching Narrative Dissonance on Unsafe Space. My name is Carter Laren. Please head over to unsafespace.com to support the show if you can. You can also watch all of our content there. Our live stream is embedded there. All of our content gets up on there eventually after it's been on YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey and Utreon and everywhere else. So we don't censor ourselves on our own website, so it's a good place to find us. You can also follow us on Twitter at _unsafespace. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Share the content with a friend. You can do it secretly, so no one has to know. That's fine. And before we jump into the show, I just want to let everyone know the next book club. Yesterday's book club was Gulag Archipelago, which was a great discussion. The next book club, if you want to get a head start, is June 12th, and it's House of Leaves by Mark Danielowski. And Alex Maselli will be hosting that. So go ahead and jump in. You're watching Narrative Dissonance here on Unsafe Space, which is a show where we question the mainstream narrative. Today's show is going to be really themed around the entertainment industry as much as possible, because we have two guests who are experts in this area. The first is Christian Toto. Christian is an award-winning journalist, film critic, and founder of HollywoodInToto, which is the only dedicated entertainment news site for conservatives that offers a hearty defense of pro-freedom values. He previously served as an associate editor at Breitbart News and a features reporter / film critic at the Washington Times. His work has appeared in the Daily Wire, the New York Post, Real Clear Investigations, National Review, Federalist, Townhall, People Magazine, and Newsbusters. He's the chair of the Denver Film Critics Society and a member of the Critics' Choice Association. You can follow him on Twitter at HollywoodInToto, or just go to his website, HollywoodInToto.com. Christian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you are muted. Oh, there we go. That you're not muted is fine.
Okay.
It was a delay. Sometimes StreamYards does that. Hopefully a delay will fix itself.
Gotcha.
But welcome.
Thanks for having me. By the way, I'm in a yellow bunker because I'm having massive construction on my house. So my background is normally not this awful, but I had to kind of find a quiet place. So we're going to go just do that as we can.
Yeah, a Hollywood guy, you're supposed to have like a neon lights and crazy stuff going on, the dancing girls. I don't know what else goes on in the back.
Right. Oh, it's all here. Trust me. Just not today.
Fair enough. I'd also like to invite our second panelist, Kevin Downey Jr. Kevin is a comedian and columnist currently writing for PJ Media. You may recognize him from season 8 of America's Got Talent, Comedy Central, What Not to Wear, or Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. He has headlined clubs everywhere in the U.S., including the Tropicana's Comedy Stop in Vegas, and can be heard regularly on The Bob and Tom Show, as well as on Sirius and XM Satellite Radio. Kevin is also a proud member of the Armed Forces Entertainment, and he travels the world performing for the troops. You can follow him at Kevin Downey Jr. on Twitter, or you can read his work at pjmedia.com/columnist/Kevin Downey Jr. Kevin, welcome.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here. Well, let's kick it off. Maybe I'll let Christian start here. What's the most important story about which mainstream media has misled people in the past week? With the caveat that we've already previously said, let's focus on entertainment if we can. So if people are wondering why you're not saying Ukraine, though, we know.
Well, I mean, I think this overlaps with entertainment to a certain degree, certainly freedom of speech and content. It's Elon Musk, just ever since he acquired Twitter, I don't know what the bells and whistles are behind the scenes to make that official. The media has behaved very badly. And there's been some cartoonish examples. I think there's a clip floating around on MSNBC right now where one of the hosts or co-hosts or commentators, I mean, I can't even fully describe how hyperbolic and insane the reaction to this is, but I think this particular MSNBC clip says it all. We've seen this flood of stories where the term free speech is all of a sudden in scare quotes. I think that was from Time Magazine. So
yep.
The media does not want us to get a full stand on this issue. They certainly want to demonize Elon Musk, who's not perfect and is flawed and is kind of a quirky individual, but certainly is interesting and doing the right thing, it seems like so far. So to me, that seems like a slam dunk choice. And it will get worse. And it's just a sign that the media is panicking over this guy who just says, hey, could we have a little bit more free speech, not less? It doesn't seem like something that Hitler would say, but I could be wrong.
It was Goebbels' famous line, right? Free speech is That's what he was all about. Kevin, have you been following the Twitter acquisition?
Of course, it's hilarious. I've never seen such a meltdown. People are panicking because they don't get to stomp on the throats of conservatives' voices on Twitter anymore. Oh my God, free speech. They're going to know that we're a sham. They're going to talk about it and it's all going to be over. Of course it is. I mean, look who's crying and look what they're afraid of. They're afraid that someone's going to say, hey, you know what? There was no insurrection on January 6th because they need that to be real. So now this Ministry of Truth or whatever the comrade's name is, she's going to decide. And have you seen a picture of her? Like if I had to come up with a crazy, harpy, commie looking broad, that would be the one. That would be her.
I can't, Beverly, can you find a picture and put her up on screen? Because I haven't seen a picture. But
she is nuttier than squirrel droppings. Wait to check this woman out. She's horrible.
She's out of central casting, no doubt.
Yeah, she's going to be the one to say, what? You said there was no insurrection? You're off. But no, there was. I've been following and writing about this insurrection. By the way, no one was charged with insurrection. It's basically like a bunch of, I would say middle-aged or older. Some were younger, but many were older. All these like MAGA meemaws going in to take selfies. There was no insurrection, but they need there to be so they can go after people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and try to keep her off the ballot as they did in Georgia. And they need it especially to keep Trump from running again. So they're going to keep push. And that's why they're having a meltdown. Because right now, Elon Musk, who is hilarious, by the way, he's famously trolling AOC and he's brilliant at it. They're afraid that he's going to let people talk. And when you're the bad guy, you don't want people talking about the truth. That's how you know who's a good guy here and who's a bad guy. The bad guys have never been against free speech or have always been against free speech. The good guys have never been against it.
It's so revealing that they reveal themselves and they don't realize they're revealing themselves. It's fascinating to watch it in real time, that they have no comprehension. They've got no shame. They've got no self-awareness. And that is really about being sort of trapped in your own bubble. And it's so airtight that nothing gets through. And it's, we can laugh at it and we should. It's sad in a way. It's sad that they just can't understand what's going on, that we see them. I think there are people who are just too far gone at this point, culturally speaking, but I want sort of people in the center left, independents, true independents, to really to see this and to understand what's going on and grasp it and act accordingly. Because I think that's what's really critical in our culture right now, is that people, not just the three of us, but other people as well, really need to say, oh my gosh, did they really just come out against free speech? Are they really putting that in scare quotes? Are they really so afraid of more voices, not less? That's ball game stuff to me. And that's where we are right now.
I mean, they've actually been quiet. I won't say quietly, but if you've been listening to what they've been saying for years, they've been against free speech. They've been saying it. Yeah. But now it's become, in the past, they were saying it in academic articles or little opinion pieces that not everyone read. Now it's literally CNN. I mean, did you see Brian Stelter make this analogy? Like, oh, it would be like going to a party where anything goes. It's like, yeah,
I hate those.
That's
parties.
What it's like, Brian. He's never been to a party, I guess.
To quote Arnold, he's the party pooper.
Yes. Yeah. So
would you guys actually invite Stelter to a party? He's like the last guy. Unless you wanted to make your own potato chips, because he is a potato. There's no reason to ever invite Brian Stelter to a party.
There are there's all these rumors that he's going to be fired from CNN. I don't care either way. He's a clown, but I just know and I fear that he'll be hired within about a week, if not sooner. As soon as he's gone and he's up for grabs. And that is sad. That's really sad. And there are people I disagree with on the left that I respect, or I can say, oh, they've got some talent, they've got some ability. He's a clown. I mean, he should actually have a red nose on and makeup and the big hair, like Fizbo from Modern Family. That's who he is. But he's not received that way.
And I think leftists fail upward. Look at Jen Psaki. She's leaving the White House and she's already got a gig telling more lies at MSNBC. You pay your dues and you move upward. Yeah. The Obamas got, speaking of showbiz, some ridiculous, I think $100 million contract to come up with material for Netflix. They've never done anything like that in their lives. Tell me that's not a payoff.
Yeah.
Tell me that wasn't, you were a good comrade. Here's your money. Go buy your houses. Thanks for playing.
It is reminiscent of Soviet era grift, where it's like, oh, now you get the thing. But I mean, with Obama, well, let's put Obama aside. With people like Stelter, I mean, you've also see just many of the real leftists that I disagree with still, like people that Jimmy Dore is a great example, right? I don't like progressivism. I think it's regressivism. I think it's horrible. I'm anti-progressivism. But Jimmy Dore is a real progressive, and as a result, he didn't obey the narrative memos that when they were issued, and he's gotten himself marginalized. And so I think all of the people I would say most of the people that I still respect, even on the left, are also hated by the mainstream at this point. It's people who are not, because they're not towing the line. They're questioning things like the narrative on the Ukraine-Russia deal, or they questioned the COVID lockdowns and everything else. So I'm not even sure it's exactly the radical left that we're dealing with. It's a particular oligarchical faction of the radical left that's got hold of our institutions right now.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the Glenn Greenwalds and the Matt Taibbis and Jimmy Dore. They've kind of stayed true to themselves and their principles, and it's made them pariahs in their own party. And they are not backing down. These are really brave individuals. If you imagine you're part of one party and then you're cast aside, the other party doesn't really agree with you. I mean, it'd be so easy just to kind of shut up and do as told. And they don't do that. And I give them all the credit in the world. And I spend a lot of time spreading Greg Greenwald's tweets around, and he makes a lot of sense. And I think it's really important. I think we should kind of lift up these people and just say, thank you for being honest. And I don't care that I may disagree with him on Trump or about, minimum wage, any other issues. I just don't care anymore. I know those issues matter and they're important, but there's something really bigger going on as a culture. And we have to bond together with people who are like-minded. I'm reading Dave Rubin's new book, Don't Burn This Country. And, he says a similar thing. This is not the time to hunker down and kind of say, well, I disagree with you on this, so we can't be chums. Those days are over. It's a different world.
Yeah. Do you agree with fundamental things like the freedom of speech? Like the litmus test has gotten pretty low resolution.
Yeah. And
what I love?
One thing I'm upset about is I cover Hollywood. I got into this career because I love movies. I love Hollywood. I love stars. I basically changed my whole life to do what I do. And here I am still doing what I do, but seeing an entire industry that basically says, screw you to free speech. We will not support you. We will not attack cancel culture. We will not defend free expression with, obviously some minor exceptions. I'm nauseous by that. I really am. It's the one area where Hollywood should be activists and should be outspoken, and they're not. What a shame.
What I do appreciate now, you see people like Russell Brand and Bill Maher, who have been just toadies for the left, who are suddenly going, well, hey, wait a minute, you've gone too far. That, you can't give, you can't get a sexual reassignment surgery to a 9-year-old. I mean, if you can't buy a firecracker because you might blow off your finger, but when you're 10, you can decide to remove. That to me is insane.
Without your parents' permission.
There just comes this ridiculous point where the left has said, all right, now not only can men have birth, but now these children can decide what gender they are. And if you're a good leftist, you just go, yes, and you will just accept it because you don't want to get kicked out of the club. But they've raised the stakes higher and higher. And that's why you see people like Bill Maher go, all right, that's too far. Or Russell Brand, who I never thought would actually say anything nice about our side at all. But both of these guys are coming out swinging. Dave Chappelle, more comedian. I mean, as a comedian, I love to see comedians making a difference. But I especially love those far left-leaning comedians who are now like, okay, that's enough of that. You guys, you lost the crowd. As we say in comedy, you've lost the crowd.
All you have to do is go back a few years to see what Russell Brand was saying. He was a raging socialist and also a pretty hypocritical one. One of these guys who's, has a very wealthy lifestyle, yet, kind of embracing socialist values. He was a hypocrite. He wasn't really well spoken. he's always been entertaining. He's always been glib. He's always been kind of interesting. But his transformation has been radical. I almost question whether it's really him, whether he thinks this is in vogue right now. I don't know. I don't know him personally, but his YouTube channel is exploding. He puts up a video. He's got hundreds of thousands of views in just a few hours, or maybe just a day. And it's really compelling stuff. He makes a lot of sense. And it really isn't directly political. It is more cultural. But like you said, it's honing in on these absurdities that he just can't stomach anymore, I guess.
I mean, I think a lot of people like Russell Brand probably viewed themselves as, I think few people actually think through their political ideology and start from first principles and say, oh, therefore I'm a socialist. I think they kind of absorb stuff from culture around them. And I think a lot of people on the left, at least when I was growing up in the 80s, free speech was viewed it was the liberals who were pro free speech. It was a liberal issue to say that, you should be allowed to publish pornography and say bad things and write, Salman Rushdie literature or talk about Salman Rushdie. Like, that was all stuff that it was the liberals. It was the cultural conservatives who were against that. And I think a lot of people just said, okay, well, therefore I'm on the left and whatever, they just kind of ate the whole package and they took the whole package deal and they said, okay, I'll take the whole thing. And now they're realizing, because the left has jettisoned some of those principles, they're realizing, like, wait a minute, some of the reasons that I first was drawn to the left, which was things like free speech, aren't even on the left anymore. Now it's the conservatives running around going, hey, you should be allowed to say what you want, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was reading about the Berkeley riots for free speech in the late 60s. All right, those were liberals, and now 2 generations later, their grandkids in Antifa paint their hair blue and then go shut down Ann Coulter at the same college for giving a speech.
Yeah,
in 2 generations, we've gone from let's embrace free speech to let's beat up Ben Shapiro because he said something I don't like.
I think some of the most chilling footage has come out of colleges in recent years. The blank stares, the angry faces, the way that they want to shut down debate of any kind. And I think the media has done a terrible job of not spreading those images, because if the average person sees that, I don't think that's like, oh, good for them. I'm so glad they're shutting down that speaker. I think that's that would be the exception. I think most people say, I don't like that conservative speaker. I hate that Newt Gingrich or whoever it is, Ben Shapiro. I think he's kind of dumb, but I don't want him treated that way. And I think if the media, the media loves inflammatory visuals. It's what they care about. It's ratings driven. It's wonderful, but they've never really shown them en masse. And I think that really hurts us as a culture, because if you see those faces are ugly and they're monstrous. And they're just young people who have been so terribly misguided. And I think if more people saw that, they'd be more shocked. A couple of years ago, I interviewed actor Josh Brolin for a project. And, what we were talking about was really just starting to brew. And I asked him about it directly because I thought, he seemed like a straight shooter. I thought he was kind of well-spoken. I said, what do you think about sort of free speech issues on campus? He had no idea what I was talking about. And I don't think he was being a jerk. He literally didn't know, because within his bubble, that kind of content, that those headlines don't get to him. And I think that's really sad.
Yeah, the fiery but mostly peaceful crowd is keeping people from seeing that. I am related to people who firmly believe Antifa is a myth, even though there's 2 stories out right now where they were attacking people, like actually physically assaulting people. And they're usually kids in their 20s attacking middle-aged people wearing MAGA hats.
Yeah.
But no one believes that's real. If you go to YouTube and search the words Antifa attacks or Antifa assaults, there's hundreds of videos that no one knows are real, because the left says, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there, because it's the media, as Christian, you mentioned they like the dramatic footage and they like that for the clicks, but they are trying to cultivate it out of the conservative petri dish, and they're ignoring the forest of violent behavior coming from the left, right? They show images of Nick Sandmann standing there with a kind of placid look on his face, and they try and prop that up as look at the violence, and they take the January 6th and they look. There's some people slowly walking through the door of the Capitol. It's an insurrection. Oh my God, that guy picked up a podium or whatever. Like, it's craziness. And they do that. And then, like Kevin's saying, in the same breath, the same people are standing in front of burning buildings saying, well, they're mostly peaceful protests here. Nothing to see, nothing going on. The Berkeley riots, one of my best friends, I think it was the 2016 right. It was the one where Milo was speaking and they burned a bunch of stuff. She and her husband were assaulted. I mean, he was beaten with a bike lock or something and like knocked unconscious. She was beaten. Another friend of mine was pepper sprayed for wearing a Make Bitcoin Great Again hat, which looked like a MAGA hat and was red. So it's absolutely insane. And that kind of stuff, you didn't see that in the mainstream media. You didn't see Brian Stelter say, how could you invite people like this to a party? Like, that wasn't the Stelter line in 2016. It's something that he says only about, maybe Donald Trump will get to tweet again.
What I've learned in Hollywood speak is that you used to say it's show business. They're looking for money. It's about capitalism. Show business now comes with an asterisk. It's not just about show business. If it was, then someone would have put out a late night talk show with a right-leaning host well before Fox did with Gutfeld. It's not all about business. And when it comes to the news, it's not all about the news, and it's not all about business either, because a lot of these videos that we're talking about, a lot of these stories would actually draw a lot of attention, a lot of clicks, a lot of extra money, and they ignore it. The media would rather say the Hunter Biden laptop story is not true and end it as a one-day story than actually pursue it and dig deep into it and have weeks, if not months and months, of amazing stories that you have to read. They'd rather lose all of that because their narrative has to be defended at all costs. It happens in Hollywood. It happens in the news culture. It is shocking, but we're seeing it right in front of us.
I think the lefty commie push is on because you haven't seen this sort of propaganda since the 30s or 40s, Russia, Germany, where the truth doesn't matter. There's something that they're pushing that's way bigger than the truth, way more important than truth. They are looking to destabilize us. That's why I know people that actually believe that the Russians faked a bunch of drug porn videos of Hunter Biden, put them on a computer, and dropped the computer off in Delaware, hoping that someone would somehow get it. They firmly believe, well, that was Russian disinformation. And when even, look at Biden, 50 specialists have all said that they faked these drug porn videos and my son is in. And it's obviously real. And this kills me. The left hates Donald Trump Jr. I've never seen him naked. Ask me how many times I've seen Hunter Biden.
How many crack pipes does Donald Trump Jr. own?
It's unbelievable. But the fact that they thought, the Russians made those. The Russians didn't make those. Everyone had to know they were true. But they just force-fed that lie. And they got, the specialists. Look how deep this runs. 50 specialists said this is Russian disinformation. That's how deep this is, and that's how big of a problem this is. When you can get 50 so-called specialists to say, they faked all that stuff. And then that way, they need that lie to be real. That way they could shut down the New York Post for putting it up on Twitter. Well, Twitter was run by leftists, so they were booted because it was the truth, and the truth is not what they want people to hear.
I often wondered about as the election was approaching, I thought, the mainstream media bias has never been this bad, never been this outrageously obvious. And I thought, but if there was a big story that could impact the election in a way that would hurt the Democrats, would they hide it? Have they gotten that bad, that crooked, where they would hide it? And now we know. So now the landscape is entirely different. And we know going ahead that anything is possible, and that they will take a video that you and I can see and we can download, and let's say, no, that's not what you're seeing. This is what you're seeing. That's how far we've gone. And to see them over the weekend at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, just patting themselves on the back, what could be more nauseating?
Yeah, I think one thing I just want to emphasize that you said, and a lot of people run around saying the problem with capitalism and the free market is that people only care about money. And I don't think that's ever been true. I think it is a problem when a business only cares about money and there's no moral compass at all. Absolutely. Sure. Like, I think that's a problem in anyone's life. It's an imbalance in your life, and you will be miserable at the end of the day if all you care about is money and those are the decisions you make. But that's never actually been true. People do have moral convictions that guide how they behave. And I think, we forget that. And so people chalk this up to like, well, the news is just about clicks. No, they're not. Well, Hollywood's just about views. No, it's not. It's never been. News has never been about clicks. Walter Duranty could have also won a Pulitzer and been just as famous if he had reported the truth that was coming out of Stalin's Soviet Union and out of Ukraine. But he didn't. He instead pushed a lie that he knew was a lie. And that's a decision because of his ideology that has nothing to do with him making more money. He could have been the guy that exposed the Soviet Union, but he chose to be I don't know what the word is, the lapdog of Stalin. So.
And by the way, there's a movie about that called Mr. Jones. It came out maybe 1 or 2 years ago. It's not great, but it is good, and it's well worth seeing to see that whole story breaking down. So it's fascinating.
We just, for book club, we did Gulag Archipelago yesterday for our Unsafe Space book club. And I just mentioned that movie because it is an excellent, I mean, again, maybe not an excellent movie cinematically, but if you don't know the history and you want to see an example of a reporter trying to go get the truth and then report on the truth and the consequences of that, it's worth seeing.
Sure. By the way, real quickly, I one of the many reasons why I truly love Twitter, and I think it's so essential, is that it's letting all these journalists reveal themselves on a day-to-day basis, and they have no idea how awful they look. They have no clue that they're embarrassing themselves with every single tweet, and they go about it. It's fascinating. I mean, it's almost like a psychological study should be done on these people to say, don't you realize that you're just shaming yourself by revealing what you're saying on social media? I don't think they know it, but it's out there. It's hilarious.
No, they don't have the self-awareness. By the way, is this the
her.
new? That's her. Wow.
Yeah,
she does have kind of crazy person eyes a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Boil a bunny.
That's what I said. I said there was a time when we would call her a bunny boiler amongst the boys. Look at her.
Yeah.
Tell me she doesn't have borderline personality disorder. She's exuding it.
I was just going to say, gentlemen, if you see this in a date, run.
Yeah.
Do not marry this.
Look at that, man. Oh. Craig.
Kevin, it's time for you I'll turn the question to you because we've gone a half hour into the show, and I know we only have you for a limited time. What do you think the most important story that the mainstream media has been lying to us about or misleading us about has been?
All right. From a show business point of view, there's this new show coming out I think it's called Generation Drag. And it's young teen boys dressing up as women and dancing for the entertainment of adults. Now, listen to the way I just phrased that. Doesn't that sound horrific?
Did you just say this? Wait. It's Netflix, though, right?
I think it's Netflix, yeah. That is a TV show. I'm going to check. I'm not sure where it is. That is an actual TV show, and the left is not only okay with it, they're pushing it. Now,
what's it called?
It's called Generation Drag.
I'm going to look it up while you're talking about. Okay.
Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but in the late 1800s in New York City, there was a brothel called the Golden Rule Pleasure Club, where young boys would dress as young girls, dance for the entertainment of the men, and then be paid to have sex with them. They would speak in falsetto voices, and they answer to girl names, because that is something people are going to be into. Now, tell me this isn't a precursor of some sort. If this isn't, it might not be the entree, but, this is their starter. This is their appetizer. So we're going to show these young boys. I mean, it's so close to being, it's disgusting, but it's so close to being repulsively disgusting because you're just one step away now. You've got little boys dressed as girls dancing to entertain adults. Is that not how has that gotten on TV?
How old are these kids, by the way? Do we know?
These ones, there's different kids in it, but it says early to young teens.
So 13, you get early teens.
Yes. Absolutely. And they're dancing for, it's disgusting. And it's not getting, I mean, anyone who is talking about it is saying, well, you know, we've really come far, you know, for the trans community. We've got kids dressing as girls, little boys dressing as girls to dance. Look how open-minded we are. Slap on my shoulder. It's not. This is just depravity. I see it as nothing less.
I mean, it is. It's like our cultural version of the exploitation in Asian and Southeast Asian countries of boys as prostitutes and that kind of thing. It's I don't see it as really any different than that, right? I mean,
I don't either. You hit the nail on the head. But the left is blowing this up as look how open-minded we are. And if you're open-minded, you're going to like this show. You know, there was a time when, there you go.
Here we go. Yeah.
There was a time that if someone had said to me when I was 13, hey, you want to dance around dressed as a woman? My dad would have beaten the crap out of him and me. And I didn't even do anything. But he said, no, it's not going to happen. I mean, there's a network behind this. They're paying for this. They're paying
it's Discovery Plus. It's the people that were behind CNN Plus.
Is that where it is? Discovery Plus?
Yeah.
This is their big move. Speaking of Netflix, though, you know who got her show booted was Meghan Markle.
Oh, no. I didn't even know she had a show.
She had some was it a cartoon?
I think it was a cartoon based on maybe her early years or something, but it was sort of a passion project for her. And listen, you know, you mentioned before how Obama's got all that cash thrown at them by Netflix. I think Netflix is going to maybe be a little more stingy when it comes to the checkbook these days because their stock is falling, their subscribers are falling, and they can't get away with what they did back in the day. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all transpires.
Yeah. I think, well, I've noticed there are certain people that get book deals. Comey got a book deal. McCabe got a book deal. It wasn't the same publishers, but both publishers were owned by the same parent company. And I just think that that's another one of those payoffs. Like you were the good soldier. Yeah. Here's your money. And I think Netflix is in on that. But you're right. Netflix isn't making what they used to at all.
Well, Netflix is. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say right now they've got to be in panic mode because they want to push their lefty commie narrative, but they're losing money. So now what are you going to do?
Well, I think they're still making money, right? They lost 200,000 subscribers in Q1, which is the first time they ever lost subscribers. But they're projecting to lose 10 times that amount in Q2, which is astronomical to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think their stock dropped like 35% or something ridiculous in a day. Yep. They've been doing this thing where they were successful because of their technology. And then they started funding content, but they just threw money around Hollywood like there was no tomorrow. Everyone and their mother got a Netflix deal, and a lot of the stuff they produced, which is why I guessed that this drag thing was a Netflix. Like they produced a lot of crap, and it just didn't pay off. And they've kind of restructured themselves to be kind of more traditional Hollywood studio organizationally, and they're not doing well at it. So I don't know. Will they survive continuing to do this crap, or are they going to have to clean up their act? I don't know.
I don't know, but they've got a show called He's Expecting. Now, when
they don't. Are you kidding me? Oh God,
yep.
I gotta look that up.
Yep. And so now when everything is against you, when you can see the wokeness ruining your company and you go, I know, more woke. Let's do this one. And make the couple Asian. Now we'll hit 2 check boxes. Who's going to pay for that? You know what? When I'm done with what's this show from Chicago? It's set in Chicago. William H. Macy.
Shameless?
Yes. When I'm done with Shameless, which I almost am, I'm getting rid of Netflix. It'll be gone before the end of this month. I just want to see the last 4 episodes and I'm done. There you go.
He's expecting. You've got to be kidding me.
No. That's what they came up with. Sitting around the board table. We need help. Smith, what do you got? I know, a dude having a baby. It's going to be the latest rage. Okay. Let's spend a lot of money on it.
Wow. This reminds me, do you guys know who Vox Day is? He's been like banned from every respectable conservative society. probably because he said things before anyone else knew they were happening. But one of the things he did was he wrote a book years ago, maybe 2016, 2014, called SJWs Always Lie. And he had a bunch of rules for social justice warriors. And one of them was he introduced a term called convergence. And he basically explained how they infiltrate organizations through the HR department and they usurp the primary purpose of the organization. And kind of like, that fungus that invades the ant that causes it to like crawl to a high place and then like die so the fungus can have spores released from the ant's head and spread itself. Like it's like that. They like take over the organization and they move it to like push social justice and their woke agenda, and it will kill the organization eventually. But the infiltrators don't give a crap about that. They're just trying to propagate the spores of wokeness.
Communism, baby. That is the definition of communism.
By the way,
burn down the factory because the goal was to pollute the sky. Whatever it is, they will sacrifice anything they have to get to where they want to be.
I'll defend Netflix on one front. I thought they did a nice job with Dave Chappelle. I think it was late last year when all the kerfuffle over his closer special and the trans jokes, because I think they could have very easily just buckled and said, we won't work with him anymore. We're going to take that special down. We want to be an ally, the usual spiel. And they didn't. And they went back into business with Dave Chappelle again. And I thought that was a very, very strong statement from a company that normally would have buckled because all these big corporations are scared to death of the woke mob. And so I don't disagree with your criticisms here of Netflix, but on that front, they were strong and they were good and they sent a message. And it really, you got to take all these cancel culture victories when they happen. And that was a big one, I thought.
I completely agree. And I'm glad you brought that up. Because not only did they not take down his special, they said, you're going to produce 4 more comedy specials.
Yes.
And you pick the comics. He's like, I'm going to do all my friends.
Yeah.
So you're right. That was a big move. And that was a big victory because they could have said, nope, you're out. You know what? Now he's expecting part 7. We're going to really push this.
Yeah. I think one thing conservatives often get wrong is they assume that the people that are leading these companies are themselves woke. And I'm not sure, maybe it's true for people like Jack Dorsey, although even then I have my suspicions that he's not really ideological. I think he's more of a pragmatist. I'm almost certain Zuckerberg is a pragmatist. Reed Hastings is someone that I've been following for a while, and I've read his book on management. I would find it hard to believe if he's really trying to push a woke agenda. Now, what he is trying to do is build a successful company, and I think he probably, like most technologists, I'll throw Zuckerberg in this camp, and maybe even Dorsey, he doesn't really know. He's not about trying to push a particular political agenda, but if everyone around him is telling him this is the thing we have to push, and this is where culture's going, and this is what the cool thing is now, and this is what we got to do, and we have to fund he's having a baby or whatever, like he doesn't have any moral compass to stop that. Right. He's just being a pragmatist. He's just like, okay, well, how do I make more money for Netflix? And if he's convinced that he's having a baby is the way to do it, he'll do it. But when Chappelle succeeds, he can't turn a blind eye to that. He can't be like, okay, well, that worked, so we got to do that. I just don't think there's a lot of people within Netflix that are even proposing new shows like Dave Chappelle's show. They're all proposing woke crap. And so I imagine that the pragmatists at the top are just kind of tearing their hair out going, why can't we find stuff that resonates with the audience? And it's because everyone you've hired is not trying to do that. They're trying to find stuff that pushes their agenda. And I just don't think, I'm not trying to be too easy on him because I do think it's his responsibility to understand what the hell's going on, but they have shirked that responsibility and they've kind of remained cowardly pragmatists, just trying to please people around them. And I think that's really the sin there. It's my guess.
I think it's funny that they've been talking about diversity in Hollywood for so long. And, in many ways, Hollywood has done a lousy job of being diverse, of letting everyone at the table to get their point of view across, to get their stories told. And I think there's a small part of what's going on now, which is good in that you get more people of color getting a chance to show that, hey, they're good. Look at Jordan Peele. He's a Black comedian who happens to be a very good filmmaker, I think. And I'm glad he's able to kind of share his stories. But the lack of the lack of ideological diversity in Hollywood is staggering. And if you gathered every late show late, Tonight Show, Saturday Night Live, if you got all those writers in one room and you gave them truth serum and said, okay, all the conservatives or Christians, raise your hand, not a single hand would raise up. And that's why you get what you get. So, there's no one there to say, hey, that narrative is wrong, or this, what about this joke? That might be funny. There's just no one there to share that wisdom. And they don't care to change that, really.
And if there were, they'd get kicked out of the writer's room by the next season anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a time when Hollywood was hunting communists. Now they're hunting conservatives.
Yep.
I know people who have to shut up. They just can't say a word.
I do too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and it's hard. It's it's your livelihood. If you want to go home, feed your wife, feed your husband, take care of the family, you have to make some hard choices. And if staying quiet is your choice, I get that. It's not the bravest stance, but I get it. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, you have to pay the bills. And that's where the bad guys will always win. When you can take away someone's money, you will control them to some extent.
And to me, that's why the Stephen Kings of the world are so sad, because when Stephen King came in to cancel Culture Attack for saying art should be about the highest, should be about worth and how good it is and how entertaining it is, as opposed to how diverse it is, he was hammered by the usual suspects. Now, here's a guy who's got more money than any of us will ever see, will ever need, can even dream about, and he immediately buckled. So he could have survived that and thrived.
Yeah.
But he immediately backpedaled. And I was like, oh my gosh, if a Stephen King can't stand up to the mob, it sends a powerful message that you and I can't either.
Yeah. And you know what? You know who I appreciate standing up is the woman who wrote the Harry Potters.
Mm-hmm.
She has that.
I was just thinking about her, J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she said, you know what? Nah, I'm not backing down.
Yep.
And all she did was stand up for women.
Yeah, she's not even conservative. She's clearly on the left.
Oh, no.
But she wasn't far enough on the left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this is something I've been thinking about. It's not one of the questions that we started with, but we've kind of gone there in this conversation, and something that I've been thinking about. There's this age-old question of does art imitate life or life imitate art? And people have phrased this in terms of Hollywood, asking does Hollywood drive the culture, or do they reflect the culture? I want to throw that out to you guys, because I've been thinking about that a little bit, and I want to get your take on Hollywood's relationship with American culture.
I think the answer is both. I think sometimes, the culture will follow Hollywood's lead, and sometimes Hollywood will follow the culture's lead. I think about back in the 90s, the Rachel haircut. I don't think we were all clamoring for the Rachel haircut, but we saw a beautiful Jennifer Aniston looking cute on the show, and we all wanted to get the Rachel haircut. But other times, I think it works in opposite directions. So I think both. But I think if it happens more organically, it's usually better. If it's, if it's a screenwriter thinking about what's happening around his life or her life, and then injecting that into the work, I think that could be more successful and more organic. But otherwise, it's I want this to be the story, and I want people to follow this. So I think you get both.
I agree. And you know what I cannot understand? Around 35 years ago, some rapper pulled his pants down a little bit to be in a video so you could see his underwear. They're still doing that. That is still a thing. I saw this guy running from the cops.
You're going to sound like an old man like me. Don't criticize that. We're not allowed to say that.
No, of course not. No, they're going to come after me now. But I don't know, did the rapper do it first? Did he see someone? And how has that managed to last for decades?
That is probably maybe my biggest cultural head scratcher, because when I see people looking like that, I think that must be the most uncomfortable thing to exist on the planet. I would think my mind would be 24/7 thinking, is it going to fall all the way down? What's holding it up? It's a get off my lawn thought, but I thought that 25, 30 years ago, and I'm still thinking it today. So when I actually was young, I was thinking that as well.
Yeah. No, I never understood it either. And thus we've made this the whitest show ever produced. So, even if this cultural influence happens organically, what happens then if you have the institutions that are producing artists and writers turn socialist, if it's Marxist professors and a Marxist milieu out of which writers and actors are being produced, inevitably you end up pushing mainstream that way, because this is what's being even organically fed into Hollywood movies.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've never seen a pop culture where it's more acceptable and more inviting to share your messages through your work. And we see that with the comedy landscape, but maybe nothing's more profound than how comedy has changed for the worse and become more propagandistic than actually about humor, about laughter. And it's really sad. But I think it's, part of why you see what you see is that it's encouraged on more than one level. I mean, maybe within Netflix, if you push he's expecting project, like that's your baby, no pun intended, maybe you get a lot of back slaps, you get a lot of applause, you get a lot of sort of promotion behind the scenes. But when that show comes out, you're going to see a lot of very fawning media coverage as well. So it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It's anyone who critiques it will be attacked. Anyone who shares its glory will be praised and sustained. So that's how these things operate. It's very, to watch the media in action is just to know it's sort of part of this overall machine, but it's a pretty significant cog in that machine.
I agree. And I think what's going to happen is when that show bombs, which it will, the left is going to say, look how much more work we have to do. We can't even show he's expecting.
Yeah.
Bigotry.
It bombed because of this. Yeah. Yeah. Not because it sucked.
Or they'll hide the ratings and they'll say, there's a new talk show. I think it's in HBO Max. It's a black sportscaster. I think he's pretty woke. And Outkick has been really kind of pounding the show because the ratings are microscopic. They're so small. But you would never see that article in a mainstream. Hey, this new show has got cartoonishly low ratings, but because it's a show that they support, so they hide that story. Have you seen the Daily Show ratings in the last year? They are abysmally small. And one late night roundup, they came in 13th among all the shows.
Oh
and yet
God.
Trevor Noah, the host, just was part of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So why would you hire the guy who's in 13th place to be your showman?
He failed upward. He failed upward again.
Yeah.
He gutted that show too. That used to be a fun show. Even though I didn't agree with the politics, Jon Stewart was hilarious. I used to love that show. But Trevor Noah has gutted that show.
Yeah, I didn't agree with Stewart's politics either, but he was good. He was funny. And it was worth watching. I mean, you're making me think of Rotten Tomatoes, because there's the audience score and the critics score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it seems like as long as you produce something that gets a decent critic score, which woke stuff will get a better critic score.
Yep.
Then you get sort of a pass internally. Well, you didn't make a bunch of money, but you did the right thing because look, the elites liked what you did. So just try again. Here's another budget. Try again. See if you can get the audience score up as well. But if you do the opposite, if you produce something that the elites don't like and the audience score is high, you probably won't even. They should economically want to throw more money at you, but it seems like they're less likely to than if you do the reverse.
Yeah, I've been a critic for 20 years now, and it's to see how biased my fellow critics are and how I'd say in the last maybe 5 to 7 years, let it just influence what they say, what they share, their reviews. It's really sad because it wasn't that way always. They were always left leaning for sure, but they were a little more fair, a little bit more honest, a little bit more brutal when they needed to be. But now it's, anything with an a pro-abortion narrative, you can just add almost 20, 30, 40 points to the Rotten Tomatoes score. And then, that works in reverse, obviously. So yeah, that is part of the ecosystem we're talking about here.
I've taken to looking for movies on Rotten Tomatoes that have high audience and low critic scores intentionally, because it's like, oh, they hated this for some reason, it means I'll probably like it.
Stalin had I forget what department this guy was in. He was just a pure communist. and I think he was in economics, and he failed his whole career, but Stalin kept him there because he was such a devoted communist that even though everything he came up with bombed, he was on the right side. And I think we're seeing that coming through. And I know I use the word commie a lot, but I firmly believe it. Like the commie pushes on. And if you're on that side and you're saying what they want you to say, they're going to let you say it.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Someone's cutting the grass. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I think there was a really important moment with the Ghostbusters flop. The movie itself was not good, obviously, but the critics graded it on a curve. And that wasn't just me saying it. Richard Roper, who's a kind of a left of center guy, he was with Roger Ebert kind of before that show ended. And he said it too. He said, look, it's not a good movie. And I think my peers graded it on a curve. And I think that was 2016 when all the stuff we're talking about was really starting to get momentum. So I think that was a cultural moment where a lot of critics said, we've got to kind of go into activist mode and not just say a movie's good or not, but is it important? And that's going to flavor what we say about our thumbs up or thumbs down.
All right. And important means pushes the right narrative.
Yeah. Listen, they said that movie needed to be because women, young girls needed to have scientists to look up to. This is about Ghostbusters. I don't think they're splitting the atom. They're fighting ghosts.
Yeah, my daughter never wanted to be a Ghostbuster, and it's because they didn't do a good job showing what female Ghostbusters could be doing. Damn it. I know, Kevin, I know we only have you for a few more minutes. So there's just some burning questions I wanted to ask you. Like, you said your apartment is called the Atomic Bunker, and it looks like it was furnished by George Jetson's garage sale.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
You know what? I can show you something because I just got this. I can show you absolutely. This is my new toy. This is a bowling ball, as you can, not a real bowling ball, plastic bowling ball. And when you take the lid off, it's a decanter with shot glasses. So there's this stuff. I've got 20 some years of collecting this stuff around this apartment.
So if you don't bowl a 300 game, you can drink your sorrows and
exactly. There's nothing here. I think older than 65.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
So I go for that atomic era. The late 50s into the early 60s, boomerang tables and whatnot. I have a hi-fi.
Nice.
But everything here is roughly 60 or 57, maybe 58 to like 66, 65.
And do you have a Rosie the Robot?
I do not. I wish I did.
Wait,
that might be sexist now.
Oh, that's true.
Why does maid have to be Rosie?
Why are you assuming?
Yeah, well, that's another reason to have one.
Yeah,
that's true. We don't know. Rosie could be an agender robot or a two-spirit robot. Yeah, we have no idea.
That two-spirit thing kills me. How did those people even get into the LGBT alphabet with the two? I'm two spirits. How is that even a thing? How desperate are they for allies?
I'm not even aware of that one, honestly, I have to say.
Oh, you don't know that one? That's a Native American one. But I think for me the big mistake that was made in the LGBTQ community was adding T. Like expressions of sexuality are not the same as gender identities. Those are two separate things. Even if you accept the entire kaleidoscope of identities and sexualities that there are, even if you're to accept that, putting those in the same thing means you've got someone's sexual attractions mixed up with whether someone identifies as a large empty room, which apparently someone at Google did at a meeting, is that right? And those don't belong in the same category, and you've now got it's been usurped by radical trans activists who are frankly hurting children who might turn out to be gay later, because when they step outside of some gender norm, they're told, oh, it's time to take some hormones and chop off your bits because you're not the thing that you thought you were.
I think when gay people got the right to get married, the left said, uh-oh, we need more victims, because we had never heard the word transgender before that. And someone said, hey, there's a couple guys in dresses. Where are they going to relieve themselves? Oh, that's our new fight. How many are there? About 12 nationwide. But all right, this is where we go from here. Let's throw them on. And you're right, they hijacked the movement. I know gay people that do not like trans people because they hijacked the movement. I know gay people who are parents who don't want their kids being taught about gender queer or transgender. Like, let kids be kids.
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I
and
think
who they sleep with as adults can be addressed then. That could be a separate issue. Yeah.
You know what? I think there was one point when I was a kid where I was probably wearing my mother's slippers. Now, if my teacher had said, Kevin, you wore your mom's slippers, you might be a woman. You might be a little girl. And I was 8, I would have, you know what? Because I had long hair and I thought I was a girl at one point. You're right. I might be. Oh, my God, I am.
Yeah, I might have turned out Superman. So that would have been cool.
Exactly.
So, Kevin, before you leave, are there any other stories we should be paying attention to? You can lob a bomb in and we'll be forced to talk about it.
Okay. The fact that this wasn't huge, but it's not showbiz. But Marjorie Taylor Greene was hauled into a courtroom because some leftists decided she was partly responsible for the insurrection. Therefore, she can't run again. Now, obviously, they fear her because she is a fighter. But the fact that she had to go to a courtroom to defend herself is insane to me. And the fact that if they want to play by those rules, and you know what we need to do? We need to go after some of their people and say, now you prove that you get to be on the ballot. And then we throw something even ridiculous, just make them choke on it. That's the fact that wasn't bigger, or that the FBI is targeting normal Americans. That's frightening. That's not their job. They're not supposed to go they arrested a woman named Lois Lynn McNichol, 69 years old, walking into the Capitol. 4 guards are there. One's holding the door for her. Oh, get that MAGA granny. She's got to go. Even though Antifa and BLM burned the joint down, they're burning cities. And more than half, I think roughly half in Portland alone, had their federal charges dropped. Oh, but Lois Lynn McNichol had to cough up $1,000 to get out of a federal jail, because she took seditious selfies in the Capitol after they let her in. When the government is coming after its own people simply because they disagree with them politically, that's a problem.
Yeah, and it's a problem that the court doesn't just throw that out right away. And it's a problem that there is no repercussions for. Yes. So this is the thing. No one then takes those FBI agents and the supervisor responsible for this and says, you're fired, right? Which should happen. You should be like, you know what? You have done this one too many times. You are out of here. But there is no accountability at all. They just go right back into the system and do it again. And they do it to the next granny and the next person and the next person. And they're going to get to keep doing it because no one stops them. And by the way, my message to the leftists is, if you want to defund the police, I'm all about it if we start with the FBI.
Ooh, I like that. Very good. That's great. Yeah.
I think the lack of accountability in our culture is one of the crises that we're not paying close enough attention to.
And I would even say, not only are they're being rewarded for doing it. They're towing the line. They're going to work their way up.
They get book deals or whatever. Yes. They fail their way up until they get a book deal. Yeah.
Yep. They're rewarded for what they're doing. Now, there were some January 6th political prisoners, nonviolent. They were just in the Capitol taking pictures. They're still in jail. They still haven't gotten to have their day in court. They're still there. You can't tell me that that's clear. That's a Stalin move right there. Political enemies will stay in jail.
For misdemeanor trespassing, basically.
Exactly. Even though some purple-haired Antifa gender, whatever he or she is, threw a frozen bottle of water at a cop or lit a building on fire. Let him go.
By the way, I have sympathy for the trans community. I mean, you think about it. You think from the bottom of your heart that if you're a guy, that you were meant to be a woman. That must be a harrowing experience. And I don't wish anyone ill. And I think what's happening in the culture right now is actually doing a devastating attack on trans people based on we're kind of basically making people who might be empathetic toward the trans community and making them enraged by what's going on.
Yes.
So I think they're holding their own cause in a sizable way. And I think it's
is that on purpose though? Is that just to create more friction?
Whatever it is, it makes me sad. Because I don't wish ill on anyone, but you come after the kids, it's a different issue.
Yeah, I
hard.
don't deny anyone's right to exist. I don't care what they do. Just don't groom the kids.
Yeah.
You know what? You can be whatever. You can be fluid. Oh, I was Bob today. Now I'm Bobby with an I. I don't. It doesn't matter to me. But you just live your life. We'll live ours, and stay away from the kids.
Yeah. And don't change our pronouns.
Yes, I have to run. But thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, Kevin, remind everyone where they can find you. And then
you can find me at Twitter you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Downey Jr. You can hear me. You can hear the Kevin Downey Jr. show on linewsradio.com every Tuesday from 5 to 6.
Awesome. Thanks. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks, guys. Great to talk to you all.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
You too. So, Christian,
yes, sir.
I guess I don't know if we need to put a bow on the trans thing. I do agree with you. They are hurting actual trans people, and my heart does go out to people who I think there are probably. I have a suspicion that a lot of the most radical trans activists aren't actually trans at all. They don't actually have that. You're describing this like this deep-seated feeling that they're the opposite gender or whatever. I don't think many. My suspicion is a lot of the activists don't actually feel that they've got some kind of agenda that they're pushing. Because just rewind into the 90s. No one cared if they ran into a trans person. I didn't. No one cared. No one had ill will. I don't remember people. Maybe some people, but mainstream didn't have a lot of ill will towards trans individuals. That wasn't a thing. And now there's a lot of ill will built up because of what the trans activists have done.
I also suspect a lot of the people in this community are just suffering. I think they've got mental illness. I think they've had maybe horrible lives. I mean, not always, obviously, but it's a hard situation. I mean, growing up, living life is hard enough. There's so many challenges that face all of us. And I don't want to spend my time sort of having dark thoughts about a community, but it's hard not to when you see what's going on across our culture. It's not where we should be. And, I think as a culture, I think we've gotten so more empathetic, so much more accommodating, so much broader in our acceptance of people in different ways, different cultures. And this just seems like things going in reverse.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the backlash is not going to be pretty.
No, I mean, I worry about a generation of young kids whose sexual compasses have been just spun and spun. What happens when they're in their late 20s and late 30s? I mean, where are they? Are they happy? Yeah. Are they emotionally balanced, or are they filled with rage for what happened to them?
Yeah. I mean, Japan's experiencing a population problem right now with an aging population. Young people aren't having sex, getting married, having kids. Like they're not populating Japan, and I view what we're doing as an order of magnitude worse than what was happening in Japan. So when these kids get to be, in their 30s, I don't know, it's devastating.
They'll hate the culture. They'll hate their parents. They'll hate the experts. If they regret their decisions,
understandably. Yeah. So what news? I'll throw the other question to you. What news story should we be paying attention to?
I think it's interesting to see what's going on right now. CNN Plus didn't do well. Netflix is floundering. Joe Rogan said, I didn't get canceled and I gained 2 million more subscribers. Dave Chappelle is thriving. I feel like there are some, Elon Musk is exposing everything with his Twitter purchase. And, people on Twitter on the right are just finding tens of thousands new subscribers or new followers. I feel like we're in a cultural moment, and these things are very delicate, but I feel like maybe the powers that be in the culture have been kind of pushing the woke agenda in a way that was inorganic. It wasn't real. And that some reality is poking to the surface. And I mentioned it's delicate because I thought that there was a movement in this direction 2 years ago, and then George Floyd was killed. And obviously that had a devastating impact on the culture and reversed all the gains we were making against the woke mob. So these things can change on a dime, but I am heartened. I don't like to be too Pollyannish about this and say, the the woke mob's on the run. It's clearly not true, but there are some really positive signs. And I think if it can take on a capitalistic point of view where, capital is poured into less woke endeavors and they succeed, then I think you could have some real momentum here.
Yeah. I mean, we are coming into protest season, right? I mean, so, and not to belittle what happened to George Floyd, but things happen all the time. It just requires the media amplifying something and getting people riled up. So there will certainly be something to be amplified about by June or July.
Yeah, but the media 2 years ago had more trustworthiness than it does now. So it'll be interesting to see if they can sort of make us dance like we danced a couple of years ago. I don't know. They still can to a certain degree. Look at every time you see a person wearing a mask in their car alone, the media still has significant power.
Yes. I've been criticized for mocking people that do that, but
I silently do it. So
I just don't understand. I really don't understand that one. So I want to ask you. I want to ask you about a story that I hadn't really been paying attention to, and maybe you haven't, but I'm banking on your Hollywood expertise. Have you been paying attention to the Johnny Depp thing?
I have and I haven't. I'm aware of it. I've tracked some of the beats behind it. So, well, shoot your questions, or what did you have in mind?
Well, I just wanted to get your take on the legitimacy. So based on what so the mainstream media, obviously there's this kind of narrative that he's an abuser and she called him out during Me Too. And then he's suing her for defamation. And I've seen a lot of people then pick that up and say, oh, she was the abuser and she's guilty of defamation. I spent a little time looking at it. I don't actually think she's guilty of defamation at all. But I'm not sure what to think about it. I was hoping you could do what Brian Stelter does and tell me what to think.
Well, one thing I think it's showing us that things are not at face value. We, like you said, 2 years ago, we thought, okay, he was an abuser. She was the victim. It's a terrible thing. Maybe he shouldn't be Jack Sparrow anymore, or maybe anyone else on screen. But what we're seeing play out before our eyes is he's a pretty troubled soul. He's got some substance abuse issues. He's not a saint, but she's a kind of a train wreck, and she is not sweet and innocent and a complete victim. That there are a lot of layers here, and any kind of doomed relationship is a mess. And so I think from that perspective, maybe it'll teach us not to jump to the most black and white conclusions. And I think that's a good resolution. We shouldn't think that way. But yeah, it is complicated. And I think he must have realized he's going to come off badly in a certain way with some of his antics, but also he's showing that she was a pretty flawed individual as well. So I mean, he may get what he wants, and from that perspective.
Yeah, the thing that I've always struggled with, I didn't want to even look into this story because I've never been the kind of person to read like People or Us Magazine, or like I never cared about the life of celebrities, but a lot of people really do. And I was criticized for not paying attention to this by a friend who's like, well, you should pay attention because a lot of people are paying attention and it does have meaning, and it kind of matters culturally what happens here because she is representing kind of the Me Too movement here. And it's a guy defending himself against a crazy lady who's making up stories about him. And that's why it matters. Have we become inappropriately obsessed with the personal lives of celebrities?
I think we've always been that way. This isn't new. I mean, this is a pretty darn high profile actor, a moderately high profile actress, and a trial that's been seemingly going on for a bit. Was it 8 months now? It seems like it's going on forever. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of salacious stuff in there. And if you don't believe me, go Google Ryan Long and Amber Heard. And he did a whole comedy sketch about Amber Heard's ex-lovers and how she used to defecate on their beds as well. It's very funny. So, I mean, it's like the Will Smith slap. How could you not talk about it? It works on a lot of different levels, from just voyeurism to celebrities' nature to how someone can have it all and be a complete and utter mess, which was Johnny Depp. So
Yeah.
I understand there's some news value there, and yeah, there's a part of me that doesn't want to dig into this. When I went solo in 2014 and made my own website, one of my kind of goals was to not write about Justin Bieber and not write about tabloid crap. And that was
I like
what I
that.
wanted to do, because my other bosses back in the day would say, you've got to write about that because that gets clicks. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I don't think that's important. But sometimes these stories do kind of wriggle into the important category. I think even the Britney Spears, the last year or two, her conservativeship and her freedom, it's a story I kind of avoided, but I also understood there are some bigger issues here that are important and that are in play. So it's not as inconsequential as you think. But, so that's my general take on Johnny Depp.
All right. In light of we're seeing, you've got some, it sounds like, cautious optimism that we could be at an inflection point against wokeness at some point. And we've talked about Netflix kind of decaying, or at least not decaying, running up against hitting a brick wall, actually, before anyone on Wall Street thought they would hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
So really having a slowdown. We've got lots of streaming competition going on right now. You've got the Daily Wire doing what it was like $100 million, something like that they're spending on new content, trying to.
Well, I know that they're going to spend a lot of money on children's content. I forget the number.
Yes.
It was significant, though.
What do you think are there pockets where I don't even want to say conservatives, but non-lefties can go to start finding better content? Or do you think we just have to keep pushing companies like Disney to stop behaving abominably?
I think we do both, because the companies probably won't behave. And I think there is an economic incentive here. The Daily Wire is doing well. I follow a lot of comedians who are not even political. They're just rebellious. Ryan Long is a great example.
Mm-hmm.
And they're thriving. And they're thriving with Patreon and podcasts and touring and video and YouTube. So they're taking these existing platforms, which are new-ish, and they're basically existing completely outside the mainstream. Ryan Long is not going to go on The Late Show, or he's not going to be on Saturday Night Live. He's doing it basically all by himself, and he's crushing it.
His ratings are much better than The Late Show or Saturday Night Live, I'm sure.
Yeah, often, or just because he's an individual guy, he probably doesn't have the overhead these big shows have. So, even Tom McDonald, the solo rapper, who's just so interesting. He had a great interview with Megyn Kelly a week or so ago. These people, like Buddy Brown is a country western singer who went to Nashville. They said, well, tone down the politics. You're kind of too right of center for me. He's like, screw you. And then he went and did it on his own. He's a successful guy doing it on his own terms. So I think those individual stories are helpful. I think they show there's a marketplace for this. I think the Daily Wire's slate is very ambitious. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think we should also kind of nudge these major companies for a lot of different reasons, culturally and selfishly, that they should reach out to the other half of the country. My God, how do you look at half the country and say, we don't want you? But that's what a lot of entertainment divisions do. It's kind of frightening, really.
It is. Are there directors, producers, writers that you really like that aren't doing this, that you follow?
I'm going to screw up his name. I don't know why I always stumble with it. I think his name is S. Craig Zoller. He did Bone Tomahawk. He did Brawl on Cell Block 99 or 90. He did Dragged Across Concrete. He's a really interesting, gritty storyteller. And he's someone that I really kind of follow in a way. I like Ty West. He's a director, does mostly horror films. He just did a movie called X. I don't see him as political at all. Actually, he just gave an interview. He talked about how when he does stories, he says, the politics or the cultural messaging always comes last. Like, I want to be entertaining. I want to tell the story. Other than that, I don't know if major voices spring to mind on an individual basis. I see sort of interesting voices. I love the fact that Anthony Cumia basically created a free speech oasis with Compound Media. I mean, God bless him. He was a big competitor with Howard Stern, and he always came in second place. Now Howard Stern is a shill for the corporate beehive and has basically abandoned all his values.
Which I find that is crazy, by the way. I mean, Howard Stern, I'm sure you growing up, Howard Stern was the contrarian. He was the guy that just say anything and do anything and ratings be damned and standards be damned and elite be damned. That I'm sorry, I just want to pause on that.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me that he has become, basically just he's just a shill for the establishment.
It didn't break my heart. It shattered my heart. I grew up on Howard Stern. I used to drive to work, listen to his show. When I left my car, I take out a cassette tape in a boombox I had in my car, hit record so I'd be able to capture the rest of his show. I was obsessed with him. And back in the day, he was all about free speech and F the FCC. And I'm going to say what I want to say. And I'm going to break all the rules. And now he is a sad little man who's cowering in his home, afraid of COVID, afraid of free speech, afraid of freedom, which he literally said. I think he said, F your freedom or something akin to that. His transformation is shocking, and how he can how he doesn't stay up at night thinking, what have I become? I just don't know. Another case of a guy who has it all, has all the money in the world, and who could reclaim his crown as the most rebellious figure in pop culture. But he decided he wanted to be embraced by pop culture, and that's where he is today. So,
yeah. Is Howard Stern, I guess he's not a boomer. Is he the beginning of Gen X or the end of boomers?
He's 67-ish. So I'm thinking that's pretty baby boomerish, right?
Yeah, I think so. When does Gen X start? I'm going to just look it up just because I want to know.
I don't think he can be Gen X. I don't think so.
Yeah, Gen X says circa 1965 to 85. I didn't know Gen X started that early. But he's definitely boomer. He's 54 as he was born. So actually a lot of boomers have followed that trajectory, right? This is the peace and love hippies.
Neil Young.
Yeah, right. Neil Young's another example, but even a lot of the leaders that we have who are now, Fauci's age and that, a lot of the people in the establishment that have brought us some of these authoritarian measures and have been really forceful in opposing free speech, were probably the same people hanging out in the Mystery Machine in the 60s smoking pot or whatever.
Yeah, my rage against Dr. Fauci cannot be measured by human instruments. But I've never really thought about what was Dr. Fauci like as a 30-something or a 20-something. It's certainly possible. I just know the monster he is right now. It is interesting to see people change. And listen, do you want a Howard Stern in his late 60s to be chasing after women and slapping buttocks and telling fart jokes? Maybe not. There is something to be said about growing up and maturing and evolving as a person and as an entertainer. But when you abandon your core values in such an obvious way, and by the way, he gave a tribute to Gilbert Gottfried recently. Gilbert Gottfried was one of Howard Stern's very best guests, was on all the time. It was an event when he was on. And then by all accounts, basically Howard Stern banned him from the show.
Oh, he did? I didn't realize that.
It was never official. And even when he gave the tribute, he said, he hasn't been on in a few years. Well, why hasn't he been on the year? Because I've heard him everywhere. Before he died, Gilbert Gottfried was everywhere and still apparently
was he saying wrong think? Is that what was going on?
There was some story that he angered Howard by some of his antics behind the scenes, but the story was pretty mild and pretty silly. But the bottom line is, when I was growing up, Howard Stern used to have on Sam Kinison, who was a complete outlaw. And I'm sure he did lots of terrible things, including drugs, but he loved Sam. He loved that energy. And he had Sam on the show all the time. It was great radio. So the Howard Stern of yore knew to get these lightning in a bottle guys and get them on and have them be entertaining. And that's why the show was so unforgettable. But now it's like, Gilbert Gottfried, I don't need him. Oh yeah, you do, Howard, because your show stinks now. And you need someone like Gilbert Gottfried who hasn't sold his soul, who still is strong and vital and crazy and wacky and unpredictable, because that's what you used to be.
Yeah. And okay, so you don't want to see an old man, chasing women and slapping butts, but he could turn into a radical curmudgeon, right? He could embrace his age and be like, get off my lawn from the liberal version of that, right? And just and still have that fire, especially because he's wealthy enough that it doesn't matter. They could cancel him and he would be fine now. He doesn't need this gig.
The media has painted him as a monster for 30 odd years. And now he's Howard Stern. They like him now. And I think he likes
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Christian, I know you've got to leave soon, so I don't want to keep you beyond your time. Can you maybe leave us with some final thoughts for the audience about, whatever you want, actually, about whatever you want?
Yeah. Couple thoughts. I think we should all be as courageous as possible when we can be courageous. I don't think we should stick our necks out so dramatically that we lose everything or things that we care deeply about. So when it comes to sort of fighting the cultural wars, you do what you can. And I think we can all do something. And I think if we all do something, that things will change much more quickly than we realize. Whether it's, supporting an independent artist who, is kind of blazing their own path, or maybe supporting someone who got canceled for just absurd reasons, or just showing up to a school board and say, I don't want my first grader taught about non-binary people. They're not ready for that yet. We can all do something. It's really important that we do it. And I think the America that I grew up in was where you could just kind of just go to work and kiss your kids goodnight and be sweet and be a good citizen. And the culture kind of worked itself out, more or less. We're not in that situation anymore. We're not. It's a different world. We could fight for it. We could keep it, but we can't stay on the sidelines anymore. That's just no longer an option.
I think that's an important message. Because I know a lot of people, it's tempting to sit on the sidelines. I mean, and for a lot of us, culture has just kind of passed, it has fixed itself. You're right.
Yeah. And, we can do something. I'm not the kind of guy that knocks on doors. I don't work for a local campaign. It's not my skill set. I don't want to do it. I'm terrible at it. But, I can run a website and I can run a podcast and I can write a book and I could, spread what I think is important information and promote artists who I think are doing the right thing. And often I don't know what their politics are. I have been singing the praises of Tyler Fisher for months now. He's a very funny guy. God, check him out if you haven't seen him. I don't even know what his policies are. I don't know where he votes, how he cares. He might lean to the right. I'm going to guess he does, but I don't know. And I don't care because he's doing the right thing. And he's being brave in a space where it's tough to be brave. So, we can all help out.
No, I think you're right. And I think there are actually more of us, and I'll say us, not conservative necessarily, because I don't even consider myself conservative, but more normal people who want free speech and would like things to kind of value some classically liberal ideas that used to be just interwoven into our culture that are being attacked. I think most people, like you said, I think it was you that said this earlier, but maybe it was Kevin, that you show them a picture of what's going on campus and they're horrified. I think it was you, right? People don't approve of this. People see a problem with this regardless of what side of the political aisle they're on. So, I think you're right. I think there are enough of us that if we all do something little, we'll have the change that we want. Yeah. Remind people, Christian, how they can find you, where they can follow you online, and tell people about your book, because I forgot to tell people about your book.
My basic kind of homepage where you can find me, my base of operations, is HollywoodInToto.com. On Twitter, I'm at HollywoodInToto. And my podcast is called Right on Hollywood. That's a weekly show. It's part of the Just the News podcasting family. And then my book came out a few weeks ago. It's called Virtue Bombs: How Hollywood Got Woke and Lost Its Soul. It talks a lot about what we're discussing today. But I think it's important to know that when you pick out these certain issues, that you might laugh at them, you might mock them, you might be horrified by them. But when you put them all together in a book like I did, it really does show you the ferocity of what we're dealing with here and how important it is to fight back. And I've got, while there's a lot of horror stories in the book, there's also some hope, certainly toward the end of the book as well. So you can get it at Amazon, or I guess anywhere you get books.
Great. Well, Christian, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have you back. Thanks. And
thank you.
Everyone else, we will see you on Wednesday for Dangerous Thoughts. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that cool stuff. And go to unsafespace.com if you'd like to support us or just sign up for a newsletter. Later. Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're new to Unsafe Space, check out our deep content library that includes discussions with everyone from James Lindsay to Brett Weinstein. And please consider helping to fund our work by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on a variety of social media platforms, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space Discord server, which is open to financial supporters at any level. We hope to see you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production may be upsetting to Brian Stelter. Please do not expose him to it. For completely legitimate reasons, Taylor Lawrence is requesting any information you may have about the following individuals. The Twitter subroutine appears to be malfunctioning. Pay no attention to it. Did you know that the word liberty is a dog whistle for insurrectionists? If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.